La diffusion vient de démarrer. Tous les participants sont en mode écoute seul.
Hello everybody, nice to meet you today for this presentation. My name is Vincent Hemmerli, working for Haro Electronics in Switzerland. Today this webinar with a nice topic of Splunk provides the analysis and Puppet provides the action, plus some interesting topics about management of Splunk Enterprise with the help of Puppet, especially the Splunk forwarders. Peter Lehmann from Splunk is maybe online with us. He had some troubles this morning with our system. Peter, do you hear us? Are you able to say some words? So Peter is not online. So I will hand over to Konrad Lang from Puppet. He will do the presentation. If you have any question, feel free to send it via the chat, or we will have time at the end for a question and answer session. So Konrad, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Vincent, and good morning, everyone, also from my side. Yeah, it's a pity that Peter Lehmann from Splunk wasn't able to make it, apparently. We prepared this session jointly, and we are closely working together with Splunk in the field as well. So, but anyways, the content would have been coming from me anyway, so no worries about that. I am with Puppet now since 3 years. I am the partner and alliance manager for the DACH region, for example, and also closely working with our colleagues at Arrow in order to grow our joint market in also in Switzerland. Today it is about the Puppet and Splunk integration, and before I start with the slides here, I will switch off my camera just to avoid a potential lag in quality. And let me just do that. I hope you can see my slide already, and I'll move on now. Okay, so what it is about today is very briefly, what is Puppet? So there is not much time left. We only have 25 minutes left. So I'll hurry about the general value proposition of Puppet, and I'm more than happy to deliver a separate session about that. But today it's more about what do Splunk and Puppet together, what are the use cases, and especially the Splunk forwarder management, as this usually is a very interesting one. And then hopefully we will have time for a short Q&A. So what is Puppet and why is it used by customers? So in this, as I said, we do not have time to go into more detail, but on a high level, you can see what solutions and use cases are most commonly adopted on this slide. Yeah? As you would expect, infrastructure automation means removing manual steps in deploying and managing the configuration of your devices. And this could be servers, storage, network devices, and on more or less every operating system like Windows, Linux, Unix, and mainframes. And automating the management of these configurations unlocks a lot of additional value beyond just removing the manual work, right? And you can see that on that boxes on the top side. It minimizes security risks and operational risks just because of removing all the manual potential human errors, right? You reduce operational toil and cost because you accelerate your and free up time, right? And you move removing friction from the development means in this case, if you are able to deploy a new infrastructure service on demand very quickly without manual intervention of various teams, this accelerates software development, for example, in providing and provisioning a new test environment for a developer very much, right? So this is exactly what developers are usually looking for. And this leads to kind of overarching initiatives, right? Continuous compliance is what we are known for because we can also provide information about the history of changes on a system, but also we can ensure and enforce the current status of a compliant configuration on a device, right? And this is also on-premise as well as on public clouds available, managed by Puppet. And Again, when it comes to the collaboration between developers and infrastructure operation teams, we are talking about DevOps, right? This is no longer a new thing, but many companies are only now starting to adopt the principles of DevOps, and we are a market leader in this space as well due to this technology. And again, removing friction for the development also means ideally you come to kind of a self-service fashion of delivering infrastructure, right? From the more detailed use cases, this is too much for this session. As I said, more than happy to go into more detail in a separate session. But usually people start with simple tasks, right? You start with a certain small use case to adopt automation in your infrastructure, and then over time it grows and grows. You automate more and more, and at a certain point you realize that you want to spread across different teams, and then you are starting to implement the enterprise platform that gives you really the full value, including all this compliance and vulnerability management features and so on. So this is Puppet in a nutshell, and as you can see on the top right corner, it's very small, I have to admit, but I hope you can still see it. We are seen as a leader in the configuration management space. As one of the inventors, we have made it to stay in that leader corner since a couple of years now. So let's go on. I mean, I'm sure you know about Splunk. After this session is specifically about the Arrow Splunk partners and Splunk customers. So I don't need to have to tell a lot about that. Same for their ecosystem. But what I wanted to show is that we are, of course, integrated and present there. The link that is popping up here refers to the Puppet report viewer in Splunk base. And vice versa, we also have a couple of Splunk modules for Puppet in our public repository, which is called the Puppet Forge. And so we are bi-directionally integrating, and I'll show that in a bit more detail now. So making use of these integrations generates additional value, of course, for our joint customers. And I guess you're all familiar with this, the 4 steps to governance security postulated by Splunk. It's called investigate, monitor, analyze, and act. And we used that, and I just, for simplicity reasons, summarized investigate and monitor to baseline, because this is a more common term in automation. And act is one of the areas where Puppet can help in that scenario. And by the way, if you have questions, you can also interrupt me, but we can have the Q&A at the end as you prefer. So we do have a lot of complementary capabilities in Puppet and Splunk. As you can see here, on the yellow ones are where Puppet comes into play, and the green ones are the major Splunk features and functions. And as you can see, we do have also on the investigate and monitor side, we can add value, and also with the Puppet DB on the analyze side. So Puppet is collecting a ton of information of all the devices we are managing the configurations for. And we can, of course, enrich the Splunk database with all that data. And this is not only data that is showing the current configuration, parameters and file status and things like that of a device, but also historic context. If a change on a device was made intentionally or just corrected ad hoc, right? And this is very powerful when it comes to compliance considerations. And I'll come to that in a minute. And on the act side, this is the Puppet home turf, right? We are an action engine, if you want, and therefore you can we have integrated that way that you can directly from Splunk, you can release tasks and kick off tasks on a certain device based on a result that Splunk Analytics have found, which leads to a recommended solution, right? And what that means in more detail is we have here outlined a couple of use cases. This one I just mentioned, automate actions on Splunk Alerts. So if you could provide enough context to be able to suggest a reliable and automated change that fixes the found incident, and also to allow execution of this change right away, right? So you identify it on Splunk and you can fix it right away. That is very powerful. And if needed, you can also incorporate and include into the process your ITSM systems, like e.g. generating and populating a change ticket in your change system, right? And this is all doable with Splunk and Puppet, and you can directly execute these Puppet tasks from Splunk. So this can be very powerful if you implement it like that. But then we have also, let's say, more classical configuration management use cases on our integration side. So one is provisioning of a whole Splunk environment with Puppet. Here we have out-of-the-box Puppet modules that allow automatic provisioning of whole Splunk application clusters, including load balancing, for example, right? And Splunk themselves, they use this to manage the elastic and automated scaling of the Splunk cloud. So the Splunk cloud is managed by Puppet, if you want, on a global level to achieve that really fast scaling when more customers are adopting it. And of course, this also includes provisioning and management of the Splunk forwarders, which is a separate use case I'll come to in a few minutes. The third one is vice versa. We can not only manage Splunk with Puppet, but we can also manage Puppet by Splunk. And Splunk is, of course, very strong in visualizing health status and changes and things from the applications and devices they get data from. We also provide out-of-the-box dashboards for Splunk that visualize the health status and the potential bottlenecks, etc., from your Puppet enterprise installation, right? So that also is integrated very neatly. And last but not least here, use case 4 is a compliance reporting. As I already mentioned, so Puppet is collecting a ton of information from the devices and also is able to provide continuous compliance on the devices we manage from a configuration perspective, right? So we can ensure that a configuration on a server remains in a compliant state all the time. With Puppet, you have one single source of truth that guarantees that at a certain point in time, the configuration is as you originally deployed it, right? So there is no configuration drift possible with Puppet, so that's a built-in feature. And if there is an unintentional change that is made, Puppet will recognize it and will either automatically or semi-automatically roll that change back in order to ensure that the original compliant configuration is still on the device. And all that information can also be forwarded and sent to Splunk, and Splunk can build jointly with their own data, can build very powerful compliance reports based on that information that are enriching the Splunk capabilities, of course. So, but now let's have a closer look to the forwarder management. And this the use cases I showed so far are adding a lot of value for our customers if the customer has Splunk and Puppet in place already. So this is a 1 + 1 = 3 things that were the use cases I was just showing. But the interesting thing with the forwarder management is that this use case is powerful enough and giving a great ROI to convince customers to implement Puppet just for that purpose, right? And so what does it mean, forwarder management? I mean, Puppet has agents on a device, and so has Splunk. Splunk agents are called forwarders, and they are, I guess most of you know that anyways. The forwarders are kind of an agent that is configured to collect data from a device that is then forwarded to the Splunk server. And based on that data, Splunk is building their intelligence and monitoring environment. And one of our partners in the US, the KINNEY group, which is why I mentioned them here on the slide, has built a whole business on that use case, right? They are a Puppet partner and a Splunk partner, and all of the customers where they are serving that use Splunk also use Puppet, and they sell both in conjunction to each other, which is a very powerful thing to do. And I don't see any reason why our European partners would not be able to do the same thing, right? Or our European customers would not be able to adopt the same use case. And let me show you what that means. So apologize, I know way too much text on this slide. I'll not go through in all detail. This is a hard copy from their homepage just to illustrate you how they have built that, right? And mainly it shows this slide, the risks that you face if you don't manage your forwarders properly, right? And the first one is if the versions of the forwarders on the devices are not current, you start losing functionality on your central engine, on your Splunk servers, because the forwarded data quality goes down over time, right? And often the Splunk team in your customer is maintaining the versions on the Splunk servers, but in many cases do not have access privileges to also update the device agent on a Linux server, on a network device, or whatsoever, right? Or a Windows server. So this is meant and maintained by the server administrator, which in many cases are different teams, and so the Splunk team has no access to do that. And if the server administrator doesn't keep it up to date, the configuration drifts apart over time, which causes then a loss of data quality and a loss of functionality, of course, as well. And beyond that, the second one is unpatched Splunk forwarders are, as any application, a security risk with potential vulnerabilities over time. The longer you don't patch it, the more. And in regulated environments, it is not allowed to forward personal data. And that is a separate aspect that you need to configure your forwarder properly in order to ensure that only the data is forwarded that is allowed to be forwarded, right? And if you do it manually and different on each server of your whatever 3, 5, 10,000 servers, the likelihood is high that there are errors on that, or let's say misconfigurations that lead to unintentional forwarding of prohibited data, right? And if you do that all automatic, then of course you can get rid of all these risks. So how do they do it? There is two versions or two ways of doing it. Puppet is capable of automating things with an agent and without an agent. Both has advantages and disadvantages. So, and this applies also for the forwarder management. There is a lean version, agentless, that is quite easy to implement. It means that you, just with that agentless script or task, you download the current forwarder version, you back up the current configuration, you upgrade the forwarder, you start it again, you check the logs if the update was error-free, and then you, with another script or another task, you check if the forwarder is running properly again. So it's just a closed loop on updating the forwarder and keep it current with a predefined configuration. That is one way of doing it, which applies, for example, for devices, which is very easy, that you cannot install an agent on some network devices maybe. Or you can also do it if your security policy doesn't allow agent deployments. But the way more powerful alternative is doing it with the agent. And inside the Puppet universe, that means that if the agent is installed, the agent checks with the master to receive the configuration for the forwarder host, and this includes the full set of features and functions that how the forwarder should be configured, including the current version. And then the master sends this configuration via a secure protocol to the client, and then the agent on the client applies the configuration and gives back the information that this was done, and then on a 30-minute basis by default, this status is checked, and once the master gets an updated configuration, this with the next run 30 minutes later is being checked. The agent realizes there is a difference in what the master tells me and what I face on the device, and it will be updated automatically. That's the way how Puppet works, and with that you always can ensure that your configurations are secure and up to date on any device. I mean, here on this slide, the advantages of automated versus manual management, I think it speaks for itself. Of course, The upgrades are way faster, and you spend way less time if you do it in an automated fashion. You also avoid drift, and you avoid unplanned changes due to the nature of the automation, right? This works across all platforms. It's platform agnostic. That's always the case with Puppet, right? So you don't need to think of different operating systems related scripts, so you can do it in one common language. Yeah, and then the others, I mean, it speaks for itself. You get all these advantages that you anyways get if you do things automated compared to manual, right? The most powerful argument here is the ROI consideration. And the KINNEY group has outlined 3 ROI statements, which in my opinion are very true. It's the mission ROI. If a company implements Splunk from a security perspective or for security and compliance reasons, and if the data quality goes down over time because the quality of the configuration of the forwarder is not maintained, then you endanger the whole Splunk mission, right? And if you ensure that, you're working towards the whole Splunk mission ROI. And the most powerful one, in my opinion, the financial ROI, maintaining the forwarders is really causing effort. I mean, to configure, patch, update, manage, and deploy Splunk forwarders, KINNEY says you need 4 to 6 hours per device. I mean, you can insert whatever amount you want here. Of course, it will be in the area of hours, because I guess you will get a couple of updates per year of the forwarder version, and then there may be hotfixes, and then there may be other security configuration requirements coming from your security team, and so on, that you all need to take care of as a system administrator. And if you can automate that, you save a couple of hours per device per year. And if you have 10,000 devices, that pays the whole Puppet implementation, including licenses, right? So that's a very easy, calculatable return on invest. And not to forget the human ROI, which is also quite important. Most companies are struggling to have or to get enough qualified IT personnel and IT staff. And of course, you don't want to piss your administrators off with doing a lot of soul-crushing repetitive work and overloading them with that just to keep things updated. I think you need your expensive resources to do the project work, the more innovation-related work in your IT, and offload them from these repetitive tasks, which is making them happy as well. So that was it in a nutshell. So what's in it for you? Customer satisfaction, of course. It gives you happy admins, hopefully. It gives you a happy Splunk team, because the quality of data is always best possible. And this supports the Splunk mission as well. And as a Puppet partner, it generates a new revenue stream for you, because as part of that, you can sell the Puppet licenses and maybe Puppet services if you are building out the service practices alongside the implementation. And then you and that's always the case, if a customer starts adopting Puppet for a certain use case, they realize how powerful this is, and it usually broadens out. This is a classic land and expand play, because Puppet customers realize that they can gain more and more benefits from adopting Puppet in other areas as well. So that was it in a nutshell. It was quite fast. For potential partners, I mean, we do entertain a Puppet partner program. We have separate different partner commitment levels, corporate goal and service delivery partner. And there is coming a couple of benefits and requirements along with these status settings. And happy to walk you through if you're interested in becoming a partner. And as a customer, happy to walk you through in more detail to the value proposition. So that was it from my side. So we do have 4 minutes left. Are there any questions? Vincent, can the people speak, or can you open up the mics?
People should be able to unmute. I have one question from the chat. How do you manage the forwarders on different kind of device and operating system, and which operating system are supported with Puppet on Splunk?
Great question, thank you. So Puppet, which is one of the unique selling propositions of Puppet, is we have one common language across all platforms. So the Puppet engine is in one human readable language that works across all operating systems and devices. And we do the translation on the agent side. And for that, we have a public repository with currently 6,500 modules for different devices. That is called the Forge, where you can download the supported content for a certain device or operating system, and that is then doing the translation to the command line language if you want. So that means you write your script once on the Puppet master, and then you can deploy it no matter on whatever Red Hat Linux, on SUSE Linux, on Windows Server 28, whatsoever, right? As well as on Unix or even on ZOS for mainframes. It works across everything. We also have a lot of content for different network devices like the Cisco iOS and Nexus, for example, right? So NXOS. So these things are supported content that are there out of the box, and you can just write your script and have the translation being done on the device with that agent. You don't need to take care about command line specifics. That's very powerful. And then which ones are supported? I think I just mentioned it. It's more or less most of the Linux distributions. It's Windows, it's the different Unix, more or less any server operating system, and also the most common network operating systems.
Okay, thanks, Conrad, for this answer. Does somebody have any question? If not, I think we will close this webinar. Many thanks for joining, and I wish you a good day.
Thanks, everyone. Pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.